Hi again, everyone. We've got here today, and it's a real pleasure to have Germaine Shalla from the Agency for Science, Technology and Research in Singapore. And yes, so Germaine, thank you
Hi, Julian. Hi,
for
everybody.
joining us. I understand you are in communications for science engagement and also innovation and enterprise.
Mhm.
Now, could you share with us a little bit about what does your role entail?
It's with great pleasure to be here. Thank you for the interview, Julian, and a big shout out to all your listeners and viewers. So, I've been at A-Star for about 10 years, and my work has been primarily focused on what we call science communication.
Hmm,
I'm sure your Japanese viewers and listeners will be very familiar with this. And
yes.
at A-Star, we started the initiative back in 2015. Currently, I'm no longer working primarily in science communications. I'm also doing science outreach
Mhm.
and marketing, but primarily to do with the research outcomes of A-Star and getting it to a wider audience, which includes our industry collaborators, students, as well as members of the public.
That's really interesting and meaningful because as we know it, it's no longer enough to just, do research and publish papers, but we need to share the knowledge with the public and also the policymakers as well,
That's right.
right? Mm.
Mhm.
So what was the main motivation behind your pursuit in this aspect? Because for some of us or those of us who are not familiar with what science communication is, so yeah, how did you get into it?
Well, I always felt that there was a little gap in terms of the amazing research, the excellent science, and the incredible impact that we make
Mm,
as a nation, as Singapore, as A-Star,
mm,
being one of the key research players in the ecosystem. I always felt there was a gap between the actual work and the communication of it, right?
mm.
And I felt that a lot of people didn't understand our existential purpose as a research organization. And also, the work of my colleagues was not getting the mileage and the leverage that I felt it
Sure.
required in order to make people aware of how science and technology can shape and influence their lives. And
Mm,
of course, on the back of my mind, having children myself, it's also for the greater good because you do want to also have a part in instilling in the next generation of scientists and researchers the importance of continuing to pursue science as a educational option in schools from high school onwards to what we call junior college and then taking their studies to university. So this was always at the back of my mind that I had a greater mission than simply turning up at work every day doing the 9 to 5. It's important to be passionate about talking about science at any occasion that we can
mm.
be given, and actually working in this niche field, which was very new at that time when we started in 2014-15. It
I
was
see.
fairly new in Singapore.
That's really great. Now, I mean, indeed, we're doing a lot of good science here in Asia, but somehow, sometimes the communication part of it gets lost. Well, I mean, that's inherent to the STEM ecosystem as well. And on that note, as a woman in this field, which we know is very dominated by the male gender, what are the some of
Fortunately.
yeah, biggest and even interesting challenges that you have encountered as a woman in this sphere of work.
So I think in many countries, and not just in the Asian countries like Japan, Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the list goes on. Even in America and the Western countries and democracies, we have such a thing called unconscious bias,
Mm,
right? And it's a concept that not just women in STEM, but women in corporate roles and every facet of professional life is very familiar with. It's called the glass ceiling, right? And I'm sure
unfortunately,
people
yeah.
like, yeah, Kamala Harris and many world leaders like Jacinta Ardern have covered this in great detail.
Yes.
And I believe that that's at work still in often in how we're perceived at work, in how we're perceived in science.
Mm,
Women are expected to be nurturers,
mm,
givers, supporters.
yeah.
We're often assigned supportive roles in administration,
Yes.
and we're often not the front face of the organization. And in research, unfortunately,
Mm,
it's not excluded from that. We might think that research is all about good science, and we take out the gender politics in that, but it's not often the case. So I'm quite proud to say that at A-Star that we have a diversity working committee that is looking into challenging unconscious bias and educating supervisors, both male and female, on the importance of giving women in middle management particularly more opportunities, because I'm sure research has told us, and I'm certain you've uncovered it as well, that men are often judged based on their potential.
Sure.
And women are just judged on their performance, and often their past performance. So if you get one bad appraisal, you're struck out. And it's a prevalent issue. So I'm glad that we're not sweeping it under the table, but we're actually challenging this concept of unconscious bias through tactics and measurable tactics as well. So we monitor the outcomes of the campaigning that we do and the actions that are taken.
That's really great. And in terms, I mean, you brought up the fact about, being struck off or biased based on past work. Then I also understand that a lot of women, who have children and perhaps being sidelined, or, they have a gap in their career, in their research career, which we know a year or two could make a lot of difference, especially in terms of the grant application aspect of it. So what insights do you have regarding their challenges and also tips on how to juggle or to navigate this situation? Because both are important, right? And
absolutely,
we cannot put family matters on hold for career, and likewise. So how would you how do you view this situation?
I think it's important to remind society in general that parents are two, is a duo.
Yeah.
It's not just women that take on or should take on the majority of the chores to do with child rearing. Most children, if hopefully lucky enough to have two parents. And it's important to make sure that our partners, right, in our personal lives understand this and play a role in taking on a greater responsibility. So that on the personal front, I think women have to advocate for themselves. Okay, the world does not owe us a living. Let's be honest. We wish that everything would be handed on a silver platter, but it's not often the case. So if you can advocate for your personal life to have more autonomy, to grow your career by having your partner step up and take on more responsibility, I believe that's one very quick action plan you can implement.
For sure.
Right? To what you said, science is quite unique because once you have a gap in your career, it's often difficult to catch up. Right? They call it the leaky career pipeline, I believe.
Yes.
Because publication records, collaborations, industry deals are extremely important to the life of a scientist, right? In terms of pursuing your funding, being visible in the field. And once you have that gap, it's often difficult to reestablish yourself. So I believe this is where we must remember that supervisors can play a role. It's no coincidence. I believe Z. Upton said this, Professor Z. Upton, who used to be at A-Star heading one of the institutes. She said it's not a coincidence that many successful women are married to fellow scientists. Yeah, and that most of their partners are scientists because they understand this very peculiar phenomenon in science.
Indeed.
So yeah, as a partner, they understand and they advocate for their fellow partners. Researchers play a very important role and research supervisors play a very important role. So I would say that what women can do is to ensure that they band together, have a voice in the workplace.
Yes.
Ensure they speak up against injustice, ensure they call out behavior that is either reeks of unconscious bias or there is discrimination in the workplace. Use the resources that we have in the workplace. I think most workplaces now understand that the DEI is very important. Diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Yes.
Right? And if your workplace doesn't have such an initiative, I would encourage women to actually start it, which is how we did at A-Star. It wasn't some grand-faluting policy that came from the top. We actually started the movement from ground up, which a few of us which felt that this was an issue that needed to be combated.
Absolutely.
We needed to make research supervisors who often control the career of scientists, female scientists in the lab, we needed to make them aware that this was a prevalent issue and that it was not okay to just let women fall back on their careers because there wasn't enough support in the workplace.
Sure, for sure. And it's interesting that you brought up, women scientists usually are married to male scientists, but I guess that also highlights the fact that education is needed for the public in terms of what women in STEM or science as general have to go through in order to do their work well, right? Because there's so many challenges that people just don't see. Right, because you, like I said, you're being judged by your performance, and that's it. But we're all real human here. Now, so then in that on that note, right, Germaine. So how else could society or the community better support women and other minority communities to thrive in the field of STEM?
As a communicator, it's very important, I believe, to be visible. And to bring these issues to attention to a larger audience. So use social media channels to advocate for these causes. Oftentimes, it's like what we've seen in the Ukraine conflict, right? Without the president going out there, meeting world leaders, being on social media, being very active in the news, we would have forgotten about the issue of Ukraine, which was a human rights violation. Very similarly, where it comes to women, gender issues in science, and the need for greater diversity in science, and greater treatment, I would say, better treatment for women who are in STEM careers, it's important to stay visible. It's important to use the resources that are available to us and take this on board in our personal lives. So have an action plan. I believe there are a lot of guidebooks available online, or maybe guides available online. There's social media posts that we can read. There are interviews from great role models. I just mentioned Z Upton, who is a personal role model of mine when she was at A-Star and continues to be a good friend and mentor. There is Professor Elizabeth Politzner. She founded the Gender Summit. And I had the great honor to be involved in that, in organizing that when she wanted to bring it to Singapore in 2019. The Gender Summit was actually started in London by her as of her own initiative. So these are women who have published a lot on the issue and have continually posted, tweeted on LinkedIn and other forums like this on personal challenges, vulnerabilities that they have faced in their careers. I think these role models, the greatest thing about them is they've not been afraid to be vulnerable about the issue and actually be candid about it.
Yes.
And reading it really gives other women like me who are going through the same thing often in my career, where, I sometimes feel I'm not making the inroads that I deserve to make because of my hard work. And it could be due to many, many factors. I sometimes feel like I need these to give me the encouragement and motivation to carry on my good work and know that I can reach my personal and professional goals down the line. Yeah.
So, yes, I guess the takeaway message here is that to keep the conversation going, the discussion going, and also to speak up when one sees a problem. But on that note, would you have any advice to give to women and girls and even men about, say, because sometimes when we raise an opinion, when we have a voice, we might get, shut down as we know it, right? I mean, even on social media, we can post something and there were a lot of people who would be naysayers. Now, it takes a lot of courage to actually find our voice and to make it heard. So what advice or tips would you have for people in terms of finding their voices and also voicing out?
Right. I would say that to what you said, is very important to include men in the conversation and people who identify, in a variety of genders. Right now, the conversation has broadened rather than narrowed. Now we are more inclusive, and we are now bringing more identities into the conversation. I think that's the first step. It's not just a women's issue.
Sure.
In fact, when we started our Diversity Day, the very first in 2020, I believe, that was during COVID, we had a Diversity Day, and the first thing that we acknowledged is it's not just a women's issue. Combating workplace discrimination and finding your voice cannot just be for females or those who identify as women.
Sure.
It is everyone's issue because women make up 50%, right, of the workforce, and we're as talented, we work as hard.
Absolutely.
We put in the dues as much as the men do and other genders do. So that's the first thing. I think it's important also that we watch our language and our images, the images we post in communication. I think 20 years ago, feminism was a dirty word. Maybe 30 years ago, right? It conjured up very negative, violent images of, people burning buildings, and we've seen all those images from the civil rights movement in the States. And a lot of us, I would say in our 40s, like myself, I grew up on those images, and I wanted to be a feminist because of those images, okay? But that's me. It was a dirty word for a lot of people. It isn't anymore. I think embracing the word feminist is important. Men are feminists as well, right? There are many men, I'm sure you would agree, Julian, in your circle, those who work in STEM particularly want to see greater inclusion and are fine to use this word.
Yes.
So watch your language and your communication and the kind of images you post on social media, because yes, everyone doesn't need a reason to be a troll these days. Everyone's behind the keyboard and they will just shoot you down, defame you, troll you, call you names. And there are a lot of these bots that are at work making us less free as a society. That's another topic for another interview. Right? But I would say as long as we remain civil online, we keep our tone even-handed, we rely on the facts, I believe that we still need to have a voice. You can't let fear control you.
Absolutely.
In your public demeanor or in your social media demeanor. Fear is the evil that we need to conquer within ourselves. Once that fear is removed, we can go forth no matter what. So I would say, just press on. Know that if you have the facts on your side and you adjust in the assessments and the statements you make online, then there shouldn't be that fear that society will shut you down or that, trolls will have something to say. Everyone will always have something to say.
Of course. Like the old saying goes, we can't please everyone. We can't make everyone like us. But I do like the fact, I love the fact that you brought up the point about facts, because I mean, this is very aligned and with what we are talking about today, the STEM ecosystem, science-based evidence, right? If you have the facts, if you have the evidence, it is fine to find your own voice and actually to make it heard. Now then, as we know, I mean, we talked about the challenges, the some of the barriers for women, whether they are in STEM ecosystem right now or looking to join or to be part of the ecosystem. Now, it can be a bit discouraging, or even some of them are thinking of giving up. Yeah. Now, what can you share any advice for the women and girls out there who wants to be a part of the ecosystem or who wants to stay in the ecosystem and thrive without all this prejudice and bias?
I think perhaps the first thing we need to acknowledge is it's going to be hard, right? It's a long, difficult road in STEM. I've worked in STEM for 10 years now, and it's not been an easy journey, even though I'm not involved in research. As a communicator, I started in corporate communications, moved into science communications. Now I'm doing outreach, marketing, and sparking industry collaborations through our gallery, Fusion World, which is a technological showcase. So I've worked in different facets of science and STEM, if you like. It's not been an easy road because you have definitely, it's a male-dominated industry, it's a male-dominated organization, and at times to make your voice heard, you can come across as an aggressive feminist. Let me use that word again. Doesn't go down oftentimes with mal-mannered scientific advisors or scientific personnel. But the encouragement is that knowing it's hard doesn't mean it's not fulfilling. Right. And a lot of my colleagues, and I speak for both men and women, know that science and STEM is a hard career. Research is a difficult, challenging road.
Arduous journey, yeah.
Yeah, arduous. It takes over 10 years to get your PhD. And then from then on, to get tenure in a university, you need to put in hours and hours of publications and work and teaching in order to acquire that next level of accomplishment. So whichever way you cut it, it's not easy. And I think we shouldn't expect it to be easy, but it is fulfilling. It does pay off because, of course, you have your scientific curiosity, your intellectual curiosity satiated on the daily, right? You problem solve, you work in teams with different people, different personalities. So yes, fulfillment is important. And that's why a lot of us stay the course. I would say if you're not passionate about STEM, it may not be the career for you. And I think we need to be upfront about that.
Sure.
And actually, it applies to many, many careers, from being working in the hotel and kind of food and beverage services where you're on your feet, 15 hours a day, to running a villa and being an entrepreneur. All these things that I've personally have had experience of in my career. All of them have been difficult in different ways, but passion and support from your tribe, from your posse, your workplace, I would say your workplace camaraderie, community, gang is very, very important. That's what helps spurs us each other on this very arduous journey.
So I guess we, at the end of the day, we really have to be very honest with ourselves. We do it because we really want to do it and not because someone wants us to do it or expect us to do it. And I think it happens quite a fair bit in STEM because perhaps, especially in this part of the world, a lot of people tend to go for the more technological programs in universities. So no, that's really great. That's great insights that we got from you today, Germaine.
Thank you, Julian.
So yes,
that was helpful.
Yes, absolutely. And we hope to have you back again to address more topics in terms of the DEI situation, and also to perhaps definitely give more encouraging words to the women and girls in STEM. Thank you very much again, Germaine.
It is my great pleasure, Julian. See you next time.
Yep,
Thank you.
See you.